Hello, in this video we will take a look at LINQ and property patterns and how you can use LINQ in C# in a modern way. Now, at this point we are in LINQ 14, C# 14 rather. Well, LINQ whatever it is, it will be alongside the C# and we are in .NET 10. However, some of these apply even to the newer versions. And if you're still using LINQ in that sort of SQL kind of way where something is where and all that, well, this is a video for you. You will learn how to use it in a more modern way, and you will see how clean the code becomes when you're using the property patterns, looking into a certain object with a certain strategy on what you will find then, how you can find it. So we have a few examples here. Let's jump into the code and take a look at them. So let's look at a first sort of arrangement with property patterns in general. There is a new way to do this in C# 14, and as it is mentioned in the actual code, let's zoom in a bit more, it's actually a bit less than 14. But still, a lot of code and a lot of people still go with some different, very weird arrangements where you can quite easily do something like this. And category comes from category. We can go back here to the actual statements here. We have records in this case, not classes in this case, but it's basically the same. Just sort of simplified version of class if you don't know what record is. But if you don't know, take a look at the previous videos in this channel. There are some explanation on how to use record in C#, and you can take a look at the recommended C# course. You can also subscribe to the Patreon. There's free courses available on there in C# and other related topics. But here we have category, name, department. So if this was a class, it would be public, string, name, get set, essentially. That's what it would be, and department would be the same. So we have this, and we have product for later examples, but essentially this is kind of the same. But the way we actually use these property patterns, we have where, and usually with where you have p, then you have your little lambda expression, and then p after that, you can do whatever you want. You can do p maybe contains or something like that if it was a property. So let's say we have a name like this. You can do contains, and if contains something is true, then all those things get back to this IEnumerable, and then you can convert that to a list or to an array or to a dictionary if that is appropriate, and do all those things. But in this case, however, we just use a simple p, and we use p is. You can watch the previous videos how this is used in if statements as well, because essentially what we have here, we do take essentially an item from a list. So it will be like for each you have that item, we take that, and then this part simply becomes a little tiny if statement, if you will. Not exactly, but very similar to that. So that's what it becomes. And again, watch the previous videos, video on this channel, exactly previous video. You will see how you can use that in if statement. And the best thing about is, if it is null, you don't have to check for the nullability. Obviously, in where you don't have to check that necessarily, at least in this regard, but you would need to check that going deeper. But then you have the category, so you have that category object, and then category has some properties. So if the properties are simply equal, you can do equal, And of course, so you don't have to just pass a little string like that. You could make it dynamic. You could even make it some kind of a method that returns some kind of calculation or something of that nature. So you can play around with it quite a bit. But the important thing is the is statement. Of course, it gets rid of that nullability check, which can extend your patterns in where statements as well as in if statements and all those things quite a bit, and the code becomes more cumbersome, less readable. That's not a nice thing, but essentially that gets rid of that, and then we can quite easily and quite readably check that category, department, whatever is that, and then we return only those values. But now let's get to something a bit more difficult, and let's take a look at other examples. So here we have essentially the same thing. We have is, again, if you're using if statement, again, I urge you to look at the previous video. It's quite interesting with the if, because that can save you quite a bit of coding and time and significantly improve the readability. But here we have is stack. Okay, that kind of makes sense. In this case, we don't have that sort of general category. We just kind of go with more deeper approach than that. But then also we have this price. So additional thing. In the products, in the P, we have the price of a product. So you see right here, it can be less than 100, but more than 30. Less than 100, but more than 40. And instead of an if statement, of course, in a regular if statement, it would be a lot more cumbersome, of course, in general. But we wouldn't use and. We would use and, the ampersands, two ampersands we would use, essentially. But in this case, we just use and we use is. But you can still check for that condition. So it doesn't have to be just exact match. It's not even equals, but it's exact match. So if department is stack and price is less than 100 and more than 30, very clear definition, very readable definition in this case, then it will be selected in here. And then we can even apply select, or you can just go to the list. It doesn't matter. For select, we just apply whatever we get. We just get a little string, a very nice readable string. So enumerable of strings. That's what we get. But you could do to the list, and you could even do this for double tech to list like this. It really doesn't matter. It's all still LINQ. It's just how you actually use the where statement. That's what matters. So essentially this is the old-fashioned way. This existed for forever, and some of this stuff too at this point existed forever. But you can do is, okay, if it's no, whatever, let's go through. We just skip that, but then we check department is exactly tech. The string matches this string, and the price matches this condition. So you can still use conditionals in this arrangement. You don't have to have exact match. You can still use conditionals, but you don't have to write ifs and ands and ors. You have or here, but this part is still detached from this part. So that's perfectly great. Now let's look at some other stuff. Just as a little bonus, let's take a look at a switch statement. It's not exactly LINQ-ish. We are using for each, and there's no link as such, but you can use this in ifs. And again, just to get started, if you're not familiar with this at all, watch a previous video and then get back to this. It will be easier to understand. But essentially here what we have category department, tech, okay, and then we have conditional, less than 100 or less than equal than 100. Then we pick this string. So the label becomes whatever string we pick by the switch. Now, switch, if you know this sort of generic one, you provide some value, and you provide this and that, then you have break, and then you have final break, where default break, right? You have all kinds of values and things to check for, expressions to check for, and then you have the default. Well, this is the same. This is exactly the same, but it's more usable because you have your whole object, and you can take the properties from an object. You can check all of them, one of them, two of them, several of them, doesn't matter, depending on the case. And each one of these separated by comma is a case right here. Separated is a case. This one is a case. This one is a case. This one is a case. And this one, you can probably guess, it's the default. So if we can do just a little switch, let's see if we can actually do it. So this would be the default, right? So this little lambda expression underscore equals more lambda expression little one, that would be the default on your sort of traditional switch. But nowadays you can just use this, and you can see how clean the code becomes when you're using this. A lot more simple, a lot more straightforward. This code will be available on Patreon, just as all the other codes. Take a look at the new ways to use controllers in APIs, in .NET APIs. So there's a minimal way where you can attach on your Blazor applications, and there are recommended courses on Blazor, and there's a lot of stuff on Blazor in this channel, such as Mud Blazor library as well. Just to improve your sort of performance for your MVPs and things like that. And there's a lot of to do with encryption. Do take a look at those new ways to encrypt, to secure the passwords, decrypt, encrypt, hash, and all those other arrangements. And with that said, we will conclude this video.